Suzanne, get Shapiro on the phone.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of Locked On Blue Jays is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. Shout out Justin Powers for that intro, by the way. If you don't know that quote, that's Moneyball, baby. And man, what a day! Before we get into it, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco, Carter First too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And drop a subscription if you guys are new. We got a lot of new listeners after this trade deadline because holy moly, the lives were a ton of fun to say the least. A lot going on. Just crazy times in Blue Jays land, Carter. I don't know, man. I don't know if I've ever been this. When we said that this was going to be the Toronto Blue Jays World Series, I didn't know how right we were going to be because what a trade deadline. There was a lot of nothing burgers. That's what I'll say at the beginning. I was a little bit sad. I was like, is nothing going to happen? Is nothing going to happen? And then the Kikuchi deal blows everything out of the water. Jake Bloss is your new Toronto Blue Jay. And oh my goodness, what a trade by Ross Atkins. Carter, do you want to break down the deal or should I?
Yeah, I'm actually at a loss for words here. I mean, this is the Toronto Blue Jays 2024 World Series. Like, you go back throughout the weekend, you're like, give me Garcia, you get Jonathan Clase. Great, like, that's awesome. Then Nate Pearson, a whole lot of nothing, let's be honest. Nothing there. He goes in Chicago and just doesn't have the greatest stuff, obviously. We'll get into that later on this episode. But yeah, then the big news of the day is Yusei Kikuchi. You said Jake Bloss, but I don't even know if he's the best player you necessarily got in this trade. This is up for debate as well. You got a ton of prospects. You got Joey Loperfido as well. It's going to be insane in Blue Jays land. I'm very excited to bring this content to you or to you guys break this down because we're pretty fired up, if you can't tell.
Yeah, so let's just go over the trade here. So the Astros acquire Yusei Kikuchi, and the Blue Jays get Jake Bloss. That was the original deal that came out. We heard there was going to be more in return. That's from Chandler Rome and Jim Bowden for the guys who broke it down. Then it comes out that they received Joey Loperfido, outfielder, and then they also acquire Will Wagner, son of Billy Wagner. This is a crazy deal. There had to have been the most insane bidding war for Yusei Kikuchi of all time for the Blue Jays to get this deal done. We heard, Carter, that some of these guys were the pieces in a trade that was projected for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. How on God's green earth did we get this haul for Yusei Kikuchi? If I was an Astros fan, shout out Jim Toth, I would be crying my eyes out right now. What a trade for the Toronto Blue Jays. Don't get me wrong. Does this save a lost season? Does this give you so much hope for next season? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But for what we got, you can't be anything but thrilled by this trade deadline from Ross Atkins. And don't get me wrong, no excusing Ross Atkins. Let's make that very clear. There's no excusing Ross Atkins. But what a deal to be made, to say the very least.
Oh, it's just insane. You know, the guy's on a hot seat and he has to pull out something, got to pull out some huge stops to save his job. Does this necessarily do that? I don't know, but it makes a good case for it for sure. Because just from FanGraphs, just looking at these prospects, Jake Bloss was the number 2 prospect on the Houston Astros rankings as of June. And then Joey Loperfido was the number 3 ranked prospect for the Houston Astros. And then you also get Will Wagner at 26. You would say that's a throw-in, I guess, but he's also been raking as well. Just an insane trade for Yusei Kikuchi with Jack Flaherty still available as well. Yes, it's crazy that the fleece job that Ross Atkins did, just making people forget about the terrible Toronto Blue Jays baseball that's going on right now. Because honestly, who even cares? other than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. raking. Like, I couldn't even be bothered. All I was worried about today was the Yusei Kikuchi trade, what we got back for him. And just the hope has been restored in Toronto Blue Jays land. Maybe a little bit of false hope here. It's just one trade, but you do get two massive prospects in this trade. You get two guys that possibly could be in the big leagues for next season. So that's why this retool, you're looking at it now for 2025. Things are looking a little bit more bright in Toronto Blue Jays land.
So just as you sort of mentioned there, Vlad's going off. I just want to give a quick breakdown of what happened on the games. Just the scores, because there's way more important stuff. I hate to say it, isn't it? As fun as the games are to watch, everybody is dialed in for the trades and what is going on, what this team will look like next season. That is a huge part of it. But let's take a quick step back. Let's look at what happened over the weekend. The Blue Jays sweep the Texas Rangers 6-5, 7-3, 7-3. Then they go into Baltimore. And it was a rough first start. Yariel Rodriguez looked about as bad as anybody could look. It was a disaster. Then he hit, what's his name there, Carter?
James McCann.
McCann, yeah, thank you. Hits him in the face. I don't know if he broke his nose or what, but the guy was pouring more blood than I've ever seen in my life. And then he walks to first base and continues to play with the face that looks like he was stung by about a million bees. The Blue Jays, of course, lose that one 11-5, but then come back for game 2 and win 8-4. Somehow this team is picking up wins with their roster being picked apart on the daily, as Justin Turner in that first game started the game, was traded, had to come out. And of course, another guy we talked about, Nate Pearson, you said we'd get into it. He goes in, gives up a home run, has a terrible outing, and then beans a guy in the head in his first appearance and gets ejected.
Yeah, I believe that was Tyler Stevenson too. So yeah, just for Blue Jays hitting people in the face today, just it's kind of insanity. Nate Pearson, for me, is like the last thing I'm worried about today. I just saw that on Twitter, the video. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's funny because it's not good when anyone gets hit in the face. But with Nate Pearson, just how highly touted of a prospect he was, all the hopes, all the dreams that people had about Nate Pearson didn't obviously work out. And the fact we got anything back for him, I'm pretty happy about. And it's just funny that you're looking at this team right now and you're looking at the bullpen that we did have. And the fact that other teams, contending teams, are picking apart this bullpen for pieces to bolster their own bullpen is just kind of funny in retrospect, because this bullpen is just absolutely horrendous. And we might not be done. Chad Green's still here. Trevor Richards is still here. Who knows? You want to take a shot at Jose Cuas. He's back with the major league team, ripe and ready for the pickings here if anyone wants to dive into him. But it's been insane, man. We have so much to talk about. Like this podcast, if we wanted to go just straight, me and you could probably just shoot it for like 3 hours. Like, yeah, it would be absolutely insane.
Well, dude, I was on the live stream today. For those of you who joined the live stream, absolute blast of a time. I had people texting me afterwards saying, "Oh my goodness, it was a ton of fun." Really appreciate everybody who joined in. You guys left some amazing comments. It really sparked some conversation within myself and some ideas that I bring into today's episode, tomorrow's episode, in the future. So it was very interesting. We're gonna have to go live more. It was an absolute blast. I know Skyler had a great time when he was on the weekend as well. Big thanks to him. He did an absolutely amazing job. And Carter, you were on the golf course on the live. That was great as well. That was pretty hilarious. I'm gonna have to send that clip to a bunch of people. But yeah, like I said, you guys have absolutely been eating up the content, and we really appreciate it because we love making it. This is the time of the year where it's either the playoffs or the trade deadline or the preseason. It's just fun. It's just fun to get on here, talk about what could happen, because for a lot of the season, it was a letdown. But now it's the trade deadline and we get some actual exciting news. So thank you guys all for that. But yeah, Carter, you are 100% right. There is an absolute ton to talk about. Let me start here. I guess, I don't know, start here. I don't know where we are. Here. Let's start here.
Are you going to jump into the trades, or are you going to still talk about kind of like the baseball games that's going on?
No, let's get into the trades.
About the baseball.
Okay. If you want to get into the baseball games, let's do that first. Sure.
Okay, so I just want to give a few people some shout outs here. And the first one has to be our boy. Extend this man. What more does he need to do? He's going absolutely insane. Another 2 home runs today against the Baltimore Orioles in 2 separate games, that is. But still, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. he's nuts. He's going absolutely berserk right now. It's so fun to watch. Again, it doesn't really matter too much because the baseball Again, it's not as meaningful. The Toronto Blue Jays still probably aren't going to make the playoffs, but hey, I mean, I don't know. You take 3 of 4 against the Baltimore Orioles, like you're going to be, I don't know, 7 games out of a playoff spot. Why not us, right? But going into Vladdy's stats since June 21st, 123 at-bats, 45 hits, first in the MLB. And this is all from Blue Jays Muse. Very good for stats on Twitter. 13 home runs, first in the MLB. 36 RBIs, first in the MLB. We're starting to see a trend here. 366 average, third in the MLB. 396 OBP, a 764 slugging, just second in the MLB. A 1,160 OPS, which is third in the MLB. And just going over his stats against the Baltimore Orioles, 6 for 9, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. Just insanity. Absolutely insane stuff from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is video game numbers he's putting on. Absolutely nuts. People are saying that Guillermo Martinez was actually, I think, quoted saying that this is the closest that we have seen to 2021 Vladdy. And boy, is it fun to watch.
He's back, dude. He's back. I'm not scared to say it anymore. Vlad is so good, man. And anybody saying, why don't we trade Vlad? I'm sorry. What are you talking about? What are you going to get that's better than Vlad? I went off about this on the live stream a little bit because we had some questions. What's going to happen with Vlad? What's going to happen with Bo? Is this a full rebuild? Is this a partial rebuild? Which we're going to get into. Trust me. This is going to be a long week of dissecting what's going to happen post-trade deadline. So there's a lot to come out here. But Vlad, I mean, there's nothing to say. You're not going to get anybody better than Vlad, no matter what you do. It's not going to get better than Vlad. It's just not. I broke down this statistic here, Carter. This was before going into today. Hold on, I just got to pull it up here 1 second because, of course, I got a million things open right now on my.
I can jump into my second.
I got it.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Let's get into it.
This is comparing Aaron Judge to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the past 30 games before today. So don't even take what happened today. It was an outstanding performance. Don't even take that into consideration. Average, Judge, 333. Vlad, 354. Home runs, Judge, 10. Vlad, 12. RBIs, Judge, 29. Vlad, 34. Slugging, Judge, 648. Vlad, 746. OPS, Judge, 1133. Guerrero, 1134. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know about you're not going to find anybody better than Vlad, welcome to the conversation. Because he is just outstanding. And you can make your arguments for Bo. I will hear you out more so on the Bo stuff. But again, are you finding somebody that's going to lead the league in hits? Probably not. Probably not. And then there's other guys that we're talked about. Gausman, Bassitt, Berrios. It's a conversation. And it's a conversation about the direction of this team, I think. But we're gonna have to get into it, Carter. I don't want to go too into that because we will get there. But I just have to say the piece about Vlad because man, it just boils me when people say that to trade him. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said before, there's a million things on this podcast we can talk about, and Vladdy being extended is definitely one of them. All I'm going to say on this right now is that Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I've said it before, I said it with Skylar, I said it on our other trade deadline episodes. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is everything you want every single prospect that you have to be, to turn into, to become, to be the face of your franchise, to hit 25, 30, 35 home runs every given year, to put fear in opposing teams, opposing pitchers' hearts. It's exactly what you're looking for. Why would you move on from somebody like this to have a chance at other players to be like this in the future? Again, if you only have one of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which unfortunately you do, and you want to completely rebuild for the future, then fine. I do understand it sort of, but in that perspective, but you have Kevin Gausman on this team. You have Jose Berrios. You have Bichette. You have Spencer Horwitz. Now you're having some of these prospects that may or may not make a difference in the next upcoming seasons, but you have players to build around right now. And I don't think that for me mentally, for a lot of fans mentally, I can actually fathom going into a rebuild right now, considering the lack of playoff success. Maybe if they won a World Series, sure, I could take a 5-year rebuild. I would just reminisce about the World Series that the Blue Jays won back in 2021, whatever it would have been. But saying that, yeah, we have a ton to get into. Obviously, we'll get into the Vladdy Bo extension stuff, probably more so after the trade deadline. Maybe they still get traded. That would be absolutely insane. If Vladdy would have to get traded for God himself at this point. But yeah, well, I guess we're going to start with the Yusei Kikuchi stuff. But before we do that, we'll go into a quick little break here. So much to talk about. I don't know how long this episode's going to go. It's going to be absolutely insane because there's Kikuchi, there's other trades, there's the team obviously playing baseball right now. So much stuff to get into, but we're going to take a short break and we'll be back right after this. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the most reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. The easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. You can join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from the free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com.
Welcome back. All right, we got tons to go over. As Carter said earlier, we have about a month's worth of topics to cover in preferably this week. So if they're going to be long episodes, we're going to try to keep them, manageable so you guys can still listen to them on your drives, on your way home, on your way to work, if you're going for a run, whatever. Let's start with the most pissed off fan base in all of baseball right now, the Houston Astros, because, they're not happy. They're not happy at all, and I totally understand. It's a complete overpay for Yusei Kikuchi. And not to say that Yusei Kikuchi's bad. I will never say that. I probably have said that, actually, but I probably won't say that anymore. I loved Yusei Kikuchi, his time here, and I will miss him dearly. But for what we got back, Carter, I am absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah, we had Johnny on this podcast last week, and he made a tweet that said Yusei Kikuchi deserves to have a statue built of himself just for the haul that he got back, which is absolutely insane. And it has a little bit of truth to it because going into this trade deadline, I mean, when this came out and it was just the one player, 1-for-1 trade, people were like, okay, this is a pretty fair trade for Yusei Kikuchi. But now you're looking at it and you got Loperfido, you got Wagner. Yes, there's so many good players coming from this trade. It's absolutely insane. Obviously, Jake Bloss as well. Just players that can make an immediate impact on your team. Maybe even this season with Loperfido. That's been rumored that he might have a stint with the MLB team at some point this year. So insane get back from this team. But again, before we do kind of go into this trade stuff and everything, you kind of mentioned it before, the Houston Astros fan base. One very good way to evaluate a trade is how mad the other team's fan base is of what they gave up. And oh boy, are the Houston Astros fans pissed off right now. It is kind of funny to see because for the Toronto Blue Jays, we've gone through so much horror, so much hell, so much torment. To see another team struggling even a little bit with what's going on, the Houston Astros are going to make the playoffs. They're going to have that over us, which is whatever. But hey, we got a huge fleecing deal from Ross Atkins, debatably one of the dumbest GMs this year up until this point. So, just eat it, Astros fans. Eat it, Jim Toth. That's all I said.
Throwing Jimmy under the bus. Oh, I'm going to have to send him this clip. Let's. We actually got a comment from an Astros fan on the live stream that I wanted to bring up because, for an Astros fan to pop in and say something, it's going to be interesting, right, to see what their point of view is. So this is from Alan D. Congrats, guys. From an Astros fan, yes, we are pissed, LOL. Not surprised, though. Our front office decisions making has gotten worse and worse over the past few years. So, I mean, I feel they're paying a little bit because this is exactly what we were going through all season long, right? We're pissed at Ross Atkins. We're pissed at Shapiro. We're pissed at John Schneider. There's a lot of blame to go around on a lot of teams. And I think as a team like the Houston Astros, and maybe this is a little bit of a caveat to what Alan said, you're making the playoffs. You're not where the Toronto Blue Jays are at. But you know what? It is fun. It was a blast. The amount of people we had in the live stream, it was just unbelievable. The support that you guys showed us. Hopefully you guys got some information that you guys could take away from that. And that's at the end of the day what we hope. We've been trying to be on the ball with all these trades and going live, making TikToks, whatever we need to do to get you guys the information. And I got to give a couple shout outs to some guys at work as well. Stefan at work. Appreciate him. He was manning the board while I was off doing the live stream, so appreciate him. Christian O'Mel for having me on CJOB. Broke down some trades for here in Winnipeg and did all that stuff for them. So that was a ton of fun. Carter, let's get into the trades, though. Let's talk about it. Just sort of what this means for the Toronto Blue Jays going forward. At least let's start with this Kikuchi trade. Then we can sort of get into the other guys in the next probably, end of today and then sort of moving forward.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with Yusei Kikuchi, just going to give him some honor here. Obviously, a guy that had a horrible 2022, completely turned it around in 2023, and then look at him in 2024. Imagine us saying in 2022, we're going to get all these prospects back from the Houston Astros for Yusei Kikuchi. It's absolutely insane. I'm going to quickly just go over his career stats as a Toronto Blue Jay. Again, it's from Blue Jays Muse. Very good for stats, just about anything, honestly, Toronto Blue Jays. So 86 games played, 384 innings pitched, 191 earned runs, 435 Ks to 136 walks for a 4.48 ERA and a 1.35 WHIP. For Yusei Kikuchi, for the contract you brought him in for, you're taking that every day of the week. This guy wasn't brought in to be your ace. He was brought in to be a middle rotation guy, and that's what Yusei Kikuchi gave you on the upside of that for the last 2 years. Obviously, in 2022, he gave you like maybe your 8th starter kind of role here. But again, in 2022, that's long lost years at this point. We're worried about the future. We're worried about right now. Yusei Kikuchi has been a very good pitcher this season, and he has been a highly touted player by multiple other franchises. You saw the Guardians were in on him. I think the Twins were another team in on him. The Houston Astros were in on him. There's a lot of teams in on this guy, and that's probably what spiked up this bidding war a little bit. But for a hard-throwing left-handed pitcher, we said this guy was going to have a bigger market. Didn't necessarily think it'd be this crazy, but here we are. Thank you to Yusei Kikuchi for everything you did for the Toronto Blue Jays organization.
Yeah, you have to be thrilled. You have to be. You have to, I think, put some respect on his name a little bit in the sense that everybody was very down on him when he was here, right? For that first year or so, Carter, it was bad, and it was bad. And I bet you, you always say you don't read the comments or you don't look at what people are saying as a player, but you do. Those are going to hit you. And for him to bounce back like he did, as you said, a lot of respect for Yusei Kikuchi. And then the haul that we got back is excellent. And what those players will be to this team, I think, is going to be the question. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle all these prospects that the Toronto Blue Jays have gotten in the next few years. It's going to be interesting. Do they use some of those pieces to make trades? Because, as I said in the live stream, the biggest component of this is this team going to rebuild or are they going to retool? This deadline doesn't fit the thought process to me of a retool. This fits the thought process of a rebuild. But I could definitely see them using some of these prospects to use for trades going into the offseason, making a ton of offseason moves, and then have these as supporting characters or pieces that they can use to make trades further into the season. I think that's more so what this was for. I don't necessarily know that this was to rebuild the prospect pool. Maybe a little bit, but I think overall, Ross Atkins and this team want to make a run with some of the guys they have now, and they have some good pieces. But the offseason, which we will get into a ton, the offseason, but the offseason has to be good. You have to bring in some big names. I always mention Anthony Santander. I think that's a guy that you have to go very, very hard for. Teoscar, another guy that you maybe go after. There's lots of options here. And I think that with these prospects, having pieces that you can move for trades moving forward is huge. And I think that that's part of the reason why they were loading up on prospects. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Ross Atkins has made me look like an idiot many times before. But if that is the only thing that makes sense in my mind right now, Carter, are you sort of with me? Like, is that the only thing that really makes sense for a team that somehow wants to contend next year?
See, for me with the MLB trade deadline is that it's hard for a team to give up like players of value, especially in that season, with getting major league talent back in return, because that's the whole point of the MLB trade deadline. It's a fire sale in Toronto Blue Jays land. Any sort of player that has any value whatsoever is being traded for prospects, being traded for players that aren't going to help that team win necessarily this year, but can help them win in the future. And then you look at that like from the Justin Turner trade. You can look at that from the Yusei Kikuchi trade. You can look at that even from the Nate Pearson trade. These are all prospects in return, because if you're trying to make a run for this season, it doesn't make sense for you to give up players that are going to help you make that run for the season. You know what I mean? So Absolutely. If you're trying to contend, you're not going to give up your major league talent. You're probably going to give up talent from the AAA, the AA systems, whatever it is. And if this team wants to retool, they're going to have to sign a big name in free agency. You brought up Teoscar Hernandez, you brought up Anthony Santander. Alex Bregman would be another player that is a free agent that I could see being a fit with this Toronto Blue Jays team, with their lack of, I guess you could say, your traditional third baseman role, more of a platoon role this season. So again, you need the power bat. You're going to need a ton of bullpen arms, but it's a lot easier to find bullpen arms in the offseason and not pay them nearly as much as it is to find guys that have higher upside, especially from the plate. So again, when you're looking at like this retooling versus rebuilding argument, I think for me, where I'm at with that is that it kind of has to be more of a rebuilding thing from a trade deadline, because you're not going to get a lot of other teams' major league talent unless, again, you're looking at the Christopher Morel trade for Isaac Paredes, which, again, that's an interesting one. You give up a little bit of talent both ways there. But Paredes is, again, probably a little bit more proven than Morel is. And, again, a fan favorite from the Chicago Cubs, which, again, tough to see. Kind of that's the tough stuff that happens at the trade deadline. Obviously, we didn't want to see Danny Jansen go. You get a decent amount of stuff back for him, but as a fan favorite, it's tough to take your heart and get the business part of it aside from everything with baseball. Baseball's a business. That's how it is. But overall, it's, again, you look at prospects, they're lottery tickets. They're not, these guys have shown a lot of great things, but they aren't Yusei Kikuchi. They haven't shown that they can done it at the major league level for an extended period of time. So we just got to hope this works out for the Toronto Blue Jays.
You talk Danny Jansen, Carter. This is a question that kept popping up on the live stream that I want to get to. And I think maybe in the next segment, we have to a little bit look forward at what could happen tomorrow or today when you're listening to this episode, right? Who are the next possibilities? Because there's still a day of the trade deadline that we have to be very prepared for. But I want to go back to the Danny Jansen piece, because this question was asked a ton. Now that Danny Jansen is gone, are you riding with Kirk, or are you expecting them to sign a catcher in the offseason?
No, it's Brian Servin season, man. Brian Servin. Reese McGuire, the guy, the famous parking lot guy, he's available as well. No, for me, you got to bring in somebody to platoon with Alejandro Kirk. Maybe Kirk, you want him to be your number one catcher. Great. I'm not necessarily on board with that. But again, you're going to need somebody else to pair in there. Brian Servin, again, you'll be able to see this. A nice thing about where the Jays are, I guess, if there's anything nice about it being this way, you'll be able to get pretty much regular at-bats for Brian Servin whenever you want. Peyton Henry be another guy. If you have any talent in the system that you want to try out in this moment, why not do that, especially if you're going for a retool next season? But looking at the catcher market, I haven't done a ton of looking into this yet, but again, it doesn't look like there's anything crazy in the catcher market. It's hard to find a good offensive catcher for a lot of teams. That's always why it's such a hot commodity at these trade deadlines. But again, Gary Sanchez is one of like the best catchers in this free agency, which, I mean, I'm not exactly getting crazy excited about Gary Sanchez, but he's one of those players. They'll have to look for somebody, maybe not a guy that's going to play every day, but definitely going to have to platoon with Alejandro Kirk.
Yeah, Carter. And it's tough to make those assessments right now. And that's where we are. We're going to have to see who brings it where. The one good thing with where the Blue Jays are at, I don't want to say good thing, but another thing that the Blue Jays are doing is that they're playing good baseball right now, Carter. For the most part, this team is playing the baseball you probably wanted to see all season.
I mean, like over the last 5 days, I guess you could say, but that Tampa Bay Rays series is still that 13-0 game.
No,
I'm still having that in the back of my head.
For sure. And I'm not saying that they're playing perfect baseball, but I think there's things that are shown in the past month or so that gives you more hope for next year. I think that if you were to see those things early on, we're talking very differently about this season. And in the sense of George Springer, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I mean, you'd hope more for Bo Bichette, but there's nice pieces. Of course, Varsho's defensive stuff. I mean, obviously, we want to see. There's little pieces in everything that give you a little bit of hope for next season, where guys are starting to figure it out. They're starting to drive in runs. They're starting to hit home runs. That's what this team was struggling so mightily with in the start of this season. And so, again, if you add a couple pieces in, which we'll talk about more later, but there are pieces to build around here. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say that we're so far lost that this is a complete blow everything up, trade Vlad, Bo, whatever that some people want to say. So I think as Blue Jays fans, right now, I think in the back of our heads, we have to think a little bit about, okay, is this team capable of doing something next year? I don't know. I can't tell you if they will or they won't or what's going to happen. But in your head, you got to see a little bit of hope within some of these players here that maybe there is a chance to dig ourselves out of hell. I don't know.
That's what you definitely gotta hope for after what this front office has said, what Ross Atkins has said. But you go against some of these other teams. You look at how good the Phillies are. Obviously, it's other conference, but you look at like for example, the Astros are still going to be a good team. You look at the Yankees who are making trades. You look at the Orioles who are a powerhouse. The Mariners who just give you trouble, seeming like all the time. Not necessarily the best team. Again, they got Justin Turner now, our boy. They got Randy Rosarena, who I actually love a lot. The Boston Red Sox are a good team. You got to think that, can you compete with these teams with the current roster you have next season? I think that's a question that we're going to be talking about a ton over this last little bit of the regular season here. Obviously, got to see how the trade deadline does pan out. There's still a lot of moves to be made. And that's kind of where I want to take this third segment, because we do still have a full day of the trade deadline. But I said this in the first segment. We kind of got off track a little bit of this again, which happens all the time on this podcast. It's nothing new if you guys are returning here. But there was three things. Now it's technically four. I remembered another one that I wanted to bring up. One was Vladdy. So I'm quickly just going to go over this. Kevin Gausman, another complete game. Love to see that. You don't want to see the bullpen pitching ever. So Kevin Gausman just said, screw it, I'm going to throw 120 pitches, and the bullpen's just not going to come out today. Jose Berrios I think that was the last game of the Texas series, if I'm remembering correctly. A lot of stuff has happened. So I think he went 7 innings, maybe 1 earned run, just looked a lot better, which was great to see. And then Addison Barger, first major league home run, wanted to give him his flowers as well. Addison Barger, when he's going to make full contact, get the barrel on the ball, it is going to be fun to watch this guy sling that baseball around, because he got all of this baseball and he launched that heavily into right center field. Very fun to see. It will be fun to watch these bullpen. It won't be fun to watch this bullpen whatsoever. It's probably the worst part of the Toronto Blue Jays in this last stretch. The Buffalo guys is where I was going with that. The prospects, some younger guys that you want to see raking at the dish, where you want to see them pitching. Again, the pitching prospects are hurt right now, so you're going to see more offensively. But if you can see any signs from Leo Jimenez, Addison Barger, just these guys, David Schneider, if he can get hot for a little bit at the end of the season. Obviously, you want Spencer Horwitz to keep up his pace as well. You can see some consistency from these guys, and then you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. coming back. You have Bichette, hopefully with a revival year again. Another day left of the trade deadline. Things can happen. But then George Springer, you got Daulton Varsho. You got some guys that, again, you've seen some good things from. So it will be interesting down the stretch to see how these guys perform.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's what's interesting now. And that's what we have to look forward to is okay, what pieces do we have that can lead us into next season? I think that these last couple months of the season are going to be very, very telling for what possibly we have to see in 2025. So I challenge you to figure out something that you guys like going forward, right? What are a couple things, and maybe give us a comment. Watch the next few weeks of baseball. Drop a comment of something that you've seen that, okay, this is good to carry into 2025. Maybe something that you think needs to be changed. We got so much more to cover. This is going to take us all week. We have that much to go over. But we got to talk about the final day of the trade deadline, which is, when you guys listen to this, is today. And what else can we expect from the Toronto Blue Jays? Like we always say, if something crazy happens, we will be live. The boys will be going. If it's me, if it's Carter, if it's a TikTok, if it's Skylar Peters and Dallin Wilton, we got a whole cast of characters that could fill in. Preferably, it's one of us, but we work as well and have jobs too. So we try to do it the best we can, and we hope you guys appreciate that as much as we appreciate you guys listening as well. So we're going to take a quick break, get into the third segment. What are the Toronto Blue Jays going to do today?
Today's episode is also sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports, because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. So if you've been listening to this podcast, been listening to the guy I've been giving the flowers to, if you've been watching the Toronto Blue Jays, this is the easiest advice I'm going to give to anyone ever. This guy is going crazy. He's going berserk. 2021 vibes are all the way back. Give me more than everything on Vladimir Guerrero Jr., whether it's bases, whether it's swings, if you want to be Joey Votto, whether it's home runs, you name it. Give me more on everything on Vladdy. I have more fantasy points. I have more 1.5 bases. I have him on pretty much everything that I can get him in more than. But if you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, this is a no-brainer. Download Prize Picks and start making your picks today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100.
All right, Carter. It's the final day for the MLB 2024 trade deadline. What will the Toronto Blue Jays do today? That is the big question. I hope when you guys are listening to this that, maybe something's happened by now. Maybe we're live right now. You guys can, let us know if that's happening. But Carter, let's start out with, I don't know, I guess, what do you expect to happen and what do you think should happen in this last final day of the trade deadline?
Well, just going back to my picks here, they're actually I didn't put teams in this, which I probably should have, but I'm actually not doing too bad. The only one I don't have gone yet is IKF, and that is the main guy I actually want them to sell in the last day of this trade deadline. I think with IKF, been hammering this on the last week of episodes that you don't necessarily want to sell low on players. You want to sell high, and IKF is the perfect sell high candidate. Just hitting out of his shoes and having career numbers that aren't necessarily close to any of his other seasons. Again, made switches this season. You want to hope that he can continue this. You want to hope that he can be just now a career average 280 hitter. But is that necessarily something that's in the cards? That's something that you're going to have to take a risk on. If you're looking to retool IKF, you'll have him for one more year, but he also does have that extra year of value. So for the trade deadline, that'd be perfect if you want to get more prospects for IKF, a guy that can definitely help a contending team win right now with his Gold Glove defense, great at-bats at the plate, contact hitter. You can do a lot of stuff with IKF. So that is one guy I definitely want to see moved. I think you can get a decent haul back from him. Again, Ross Atkins is going to start cooking like he was in the kitchen with Yusei Kikuchi. Probably going to be able to get a decent haul back for IKF. And the other player that I am throwing in this now, because as soon as the fire sale started, I didn't want these guys to go initially. And it does suck seeing a lot of these players go. But it's like how I am in fantasy. I make one trade. I want a million trades to be made. The Toronto Blue Jays probably aren't going to compete for a playoff spot. So you might as well move on from Chad Green. This bullpen needs to be completely revamped anyway. So you might as well just throw another arm into that piece, get rid of Chad Green. Again, if you want to trade him to a contending team, you just want to package him somehow if you can get Kevin out of this Kevin Kiermaier deal, something like that. Kevin Kiermaier is probably just going to be a Blue Jay. But saying that, if you can trade Chad Green, you can trade IKF, get more prospects, bolster this prospect system, the farm system even more. I think that's exactly what you want to do if you're Ross Atkins, and that's exactly what you want to do for the future of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Those are the two guys that I have that I think should be moved at this deadline ASAP. And I think that Ross Atkins is probably doing a little bit of looking on these two guys. I want to talk about the Chad Green thing because it's interesting, right? I think relievers are such a hot commodity right now that teams need them. They want to bolster bullpens, that there's not a ton of options out there for great bullpen arms. And Chad Green is one of them. And I think the question is how much you're going to get back for him. And I think that the return would be big. I think it would be massive for Chad Green. And we'll have to wait and see it. And maybe it's happened by the time that you're listening to this. Maybe the Chad Green deal is already gone and me and Carter are live. But he's a guy that I definitely want to see what they could get back for him. And IKF, especially, he's been so good this season. And he's a guy I don't necessarily know if he can keep it going into next year. So I hope that the Blue Jays sell high and they get a good deal for him too. That's about where I'm at, Carter. I think any more than that, you're just stretching. The Trevor Richards, maybe you get a deal for him, but you get absolutely nothing in return probably. So I think the Chad Green and the IKF trades need to happen, and they need to happen obviously today.
Yeah, I see Chad Green being moved a lot easier than IKF. I think a lot of teams are going to be needing bullpen arms right now. The Yankees could definitely still use them. Another team is the Padres that have been linked to him. Chad Green can be very useful on every single team he goes to because he's used to pitching in high leverage. He has been very effective this season. IKF's another guy. It's more of a risky deal. Again, he's going to help you a lot this season, but is this a guy you want to give up one of your top 10 prospects for? Probably not. Again, I don't know if the Houston Astros would want to look into IKF. Probably don't need him necessarily, but if the Houston Astros want any single player from the Toronto Blue Jays at this point, come on down. We'll be the first ones. If you guys want anything from us, absolutely go for it. We'll definitely be talking to you guys in the business side of things because of the hauls we're getting back. But yeah, IKF, I don't really have a fit for him off the top of my head. Chad Green, I know he's been linked to the Yankees. The Padres just makes sense for me. I just don't know what team's going to be in on IKF because it is such a risky move for a guy that can pretty much play anywhere in the infield. Definitely could find some spots for him. Maybe the Chicago Cubs, as they're buying heavily right now, could use another middle infielder. Going to be interesting to see what they do over there. But let's just get, as like I said, the fire sale started. Let's keep the rock moving here. Let's keep the rock rolling. Get as many prospects, as much value as we can for these players on expiring contracts.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too. You know what? It's been an exciting couple days. I think for this podcast, I've never been more excited to be like almost on call for the podcast, where you're like something happens, the boys are all rushing to their phones, and we're like, all right, what are we doing? How are we setting this up? Who's going live? It's been a really, really fun couple days. We've had a group chat with Skylar Peters, Dallin Wilton, myself, and Carter. And something happens, and the boys are just lighting up the phones, and everybody's on their phone the whole time checking, so that we're always getting the updates as quickly as possible. You guys, like I said, I've been blasting out tweets for the past couple days, so make sure you guys go follow me there, Braden 5 Wasco, Carter first too. It's been a lot of fun. And I think out of all this Toronto Blue Jays season, yeah, we've had some fun moments. Obviously, when we went down to Toronto, it was a blast. We did lives, we were chatting with you guys. And let us know if you guys want us to do more lives and stuff like that. We can, just even if it's just like, hey, let's do some fan questions. Let's jump in there. Let's just chat things out. We can do that. That is, it was a ton of fun today. Yesterday, I guess I had an absolute blast. And it was just me sitting in one of our pod studios by myself, looking at you guys, looking at the chat. And it was a ton of fun. So I hope you guys enjoy, sort of what we bring here as well. It was a very difficult weekend. Don't get me wrong, trying to coordinate everything and get, everything out to you guys. It was tough, balancing that and work. But man, you get a day like today, and it was so much fun that it just keeps you wanting to do more. So big thanks to you guys for this, sort of trade deadline weekend. It's been huge. It's been fun. It's been exciting. We've had our debates, me and, Carter and the boys. We've sat down and we've, bickered a little bit back and forth on what should happen, what should not, as you guys have seen in some of the trade deadline episodes. So yeah, Carter, I don't know, man. We have still a ton more to go over, but I think for today, we've covered the amount that we about can for an episode of a podcast. And then, we still got a whole week of a ton of stuff to break down.
Oh, absolutely. I got two more things. First one is we got Shrek on the team. He's here. RJ Shrek. He's back. It's going to be nice to see the ogre from the swamp making an impact on this team. But the other thing is actually something new from the Locked On Podcast Network. Is obviously we appreciate you guys making us your first listen, the Locked On Blue Jays. But we have a second listen now, and it is our Locked On MLB channel. Me and Braden did go on with this guy. He goes by Sully. His name is Paul Sullivan, but yeah, always goes by Sully on his podcast. I believe he does the Athletics podcast as well. So if you guys have the opportunity, check that out. He'll be very busy with all the trades. Obviously, Lane Thomas being dealt, Jazz Chisholm trade, ton of different trades going on. So perfect opportunity to check out the analysis over on that Locked On MLB channel. But yeah, we could have been talking like for another 4 hours. We didn't even go into really the what Yusei Kikuchi brought back. We gave over the names, so it didn't really break down their stats at all. But we have a ton of time to do that this week. This will pretty much be the trade deadline week, not trade deadline day anymore. Probably going into the next week. Probably be talking about this trade for a very long time. So you guys better get used to it. We'll obviously be coming at you guys with a bunch of new and interesting content as well. Blue Jays games, whether it's the younger stars battling some prospect stuff. Ricky Tiedemann didn't really go too much into him as well. This weekend's just been insane. I love the trade deadline. So much fun things going on. I'd much rather buy than sell the trade deadline, but here we are having fun nonetheless. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. We appreciate the likes, comments, support, all that kind of stuff. And we'll be back tomorrow with hopefully some more trades to debrief.